Every once in a while, an album comes around that is not only great, but it represents something that no album before it has been quite able to capture. This album highlights a certain niche about the culture, a personality of sorts that up until this point has been unnoticed. Examples of this include The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, College Dropout by Kanye West, A Night at the Opera by Queen, you know? Albums that really galvanize the music world with their fresh new perspective. Well, today let's talk about an album that I think should be considered in the same breath. Greatest Hits by Remo Drive.
I've been self-diagnosing all my problems, carrying all my stress in the jaw.
Greatest Hits is the debut album by Minnesota rock band Remo Drive, released on March 16th, 2017. Now, as I said before, I think this album represents something. Everything here, from the lyrics to the vocals to the instrumentals, even the music videos, they all point to a very specific personality, which I am tentatively calling the narcissistic emo theater kid. Many of the songs here sound like musical theater ballads, what with the way they're structured and the way Eric Paulson sings them. Take the song Summertime. The first verse is very quiet, like those moments in musicals when the character first breaks into song. And then the chorus gets very loud and climactic. It kind of reminds me of Suddenly Seymour in that way. And then there's Eric Paulson singing on Summertime, and really the entire album. He's very dramatic and ostentatious and articulate with his singing, like an over-the-top Broadway voice. Sometimes Eric will put a little vibrato in his voice to emphasize things. It really does remind me of the way a theater kid sings. And it might just be my imagination, but the vocals on Greatest Hits sound slightly overexposed in the way that like a radio voice from the 1940s would sound. It makes his voice sound like it's from a different time, like the golden age of Hollywood or something. And I think that's really cool, honestly, because I've never heard another punk album where the vocals sound like this. It's like his voice and the instrumentals are from two totally different genres, but they make it work. And I'm pretty sure they wanted Eric to sound this way, and it's not just his normal voice, because on all other Remo Drive projects, his voice sounds noticeably lower, even on stuff they released years before Greatest Hits. So yeah, that makes me think the whole theater kid aspect is intentional. And we'll go deeper into this when we talk about the chaotic music videos that were made for Greatest Hits. But first I want to touch on the lyrics. The lyrics that Eric sings here really bring an element of narcissism to our theater kid personality. Take the song Art School, where our character sings about attending art school and being intimidated by it. Art school, colored hair, too cool for me, but that's fair. This is some classic self-deprecation that we see in a lot of emo songs. However, in the very next bar, our character acts differently. He talks confidently and refers to the school as his small empire. So in the very first song, we have this dichotomy where our character doesn't think very highly of himself while also being very full of himself and prone to delusions of grandeur. I mean, he pretty much admits this on the song Trying to Fool You. I've been losing all control, I've been slipping away. I've always struck myself as someone who's an asshole. And also on the song Name Brand, which shows that our character has an insatiable lust for high-class products, and he compares himself to an angry child. I am a child who needs pleasing. Pacifier lost my mouth, I'm screaming. So apprehensive, so self-conscious. Greatest Hits is like on the level of Weezer's Pinkerton in terms of an unlikable protagonist. And the song You're Killing Me is similar to this because it's not really about this annoyingly miserable person that Eric sings about. It's more about how this other person makes our character feel and how he wants to harm himself because this other person is just so suffocating. Now, it would be one thing if our character were just earnestly expressing his emotions. That would be fine. But it very much seems like there's an extra layer to it, almost like he's a caricature of an emo person. Okay, now let's talk about the music videos, which I am so excited to do. The music videos for Greatest Hits add so much more to our theater kid personality. First, let's tackle the two most important music videos, which are Art School and I'm My Own Doctor. I say this because these are the ones with the highest production value and they're the most relevant to our theater kid theme. Now, initially, I didn't like these music videos because I thought they had too much style and not enough substance. Because usually, a narrative music video will have a split between the artist looking at the camera and singing the song and the story of the video. But with art school, there is no split. Pretty much everyone looks at the camera at some point, and there really is no story. They're just hanging out at an art school. Although this looks suspiciously like a science classroom, so what the hell. I'm My Own Doctor is a little better in this regard because it has a slightly more coherent story, but for the most part, both music videos are just random shots of people doing artful poses and things that look interesting. Like here in I'm My Own Doctor, there's no practical reason for this kid to be popping a balloon that has a happy face on it. We just take it to mean that he is sad. And there's no practical reason for Eric to be holding a magnifying glass in front of his face. It's just a metaphor for how critical he is of his own features, and it looks cool. I mean, at least those shots have a deeper meaning. What about this shot? Like there are flowers everywhere and one kid has an elephant mask and Eric is holding a really long stick. This doesn't really mean anything, and there are so many shots like this. Like, why are Remo Drive standing on these posts, and why are these people reaching up to them? Why is this kid eating so many popsicles at once? Why is this kid rubbing a plastic snake on her face? Why is this kid kissing a tree? These are the things that I was hung up on when I first watched these music videos. But then I thought that, well, maybe these videos aren't supposed to make practical sense because they're from the perspective of a narcissistic emo theater kid. The way I see it now is that these music videos aren't actually happening. They're just the random thoughts of a pretentious theater kid who's really into emo and really into Wes Anderson. All 4 of these music videos seem heavily inspired by Wes Anderson. They all have warm and bright color palettes and lots of symmetrical shots, lots of zooms, and a lot of Wes Anderson anachronism going on, you know? What with the summer camp and the clothing, there's not a phone in sight. And in the music video for each, some bullies force Eric into a bathroom stall and give him a swirly. When was the last time anybody gave anyone a swirly? But I think the most powerful connection these music videos have to Wes Anderson is just the general demeanor of the people in them. They're all mostly still, looking at the camera with smug looks on their faces. And honestly, I really relate to this because I like Wes Anderson and I make videos, and I've had moments where I treat myself very delicately just for fun. You know, I do pointed poses and I turn my head to look at the camera, and I have an aggressively neutral expression on my face, like I'm a character in a Wes Anderson movie. I've done Wes Anderson face before, I'm sorry. I'm very familiar with all the zooms and all the whip pans, just like this character. I also want to point out that this zoom in art school is an editing zoom and not a camera zoom. Trust me, I'm an editor, they did this in post and not with the actual camera. And a lot of the zooms in these music videos are fake like this. It's like they're saying that this character wants to be like Wes Anderson. He wants to have that zoom, but only as an afterthought. He doesn't plan ahead for it. The bigger picture is that this character wants to emulate Wes Anderson's style. He wants to act like a character in a Wes Anderson movie, but he's too pretentious to see that he's not very good at it. At least that's my interpretation. Guys, Greatest Hits is an album that just makes so much sense to me. If I were to give it a label, I would call it post-emo. And I know that the word post is very controversial in the music world and the art world alike. But when I call Greatest Hits post-emo, I mean that it displays emo sentiments while also parodying those same sentiments. It's not completely a parody of emo culture, but it's also not completely straight emo either. You could call it a celebration of emo, a commentary of emo, I don't really know. All I know is that it feels very tongue-in-cheek. It feels very meta. I mean, look at the title of this thing, Greatest Hits. They named their debut album Greatest Hits. And look at the cover art with their frickin' turtlenecks and the film grain. I think this very specific style is part of the reason why Remo Drive declined in popularity after this, because their next 2 albums just feel like normal albums. I mean, they're not bad albums by any means, but I'm pretty sure even diehard fans of them would admit that they don't have nearly the personality that Greatest Hits has. And that's what it's really all about, isn't it? You gotta have personality. You can't get 4 million views on your emo music video nowadays if you don't have personality. And Greatest Hits spoiled us with it.